Welcome to Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh here with producer Brooke Peterson. Mating Matters is a podcast that looks at life and human behavior through a lens of reproduction, specifically through evolutionary reproduction. We are all wired to reproduce and connect with each other, and most of our human behaviors across our lifespan are designed to increase our reproductive odds. So while it's fun to think, oh, this is a podcast about sex and love, it's also a podcast about fierce competition for mates. It's a podcast for how we organize ourselves in the social strata to make it easier for us to obtain mates. We evolved to be really efficient creatures. Remember, you're here today because you evolved from amazing ancestors who had great human mating strategy. Today, I want to talk about a broken heart, specifically what it feels like to be socially rejected. Social isolation directly links to our ability to mate or not, because we always lived in tribes. We always found mates through those connections. And I know it seems like an easy thing to be able to sit alone in your house and swipe through a dating app and find another person who's alone and think that everything will be okay after that. But the truth is, human mating evolved as a bridge between tribes. In other words, a hunter came over from another tribe, brought in his new genes and mixed them, and maybe those tribes became friends with each other. And so every relationship we have, every romantic relationship, is a bridge between two tribes. And all of us do better when we have not only a primary attachment figure, but when we have multiple attachment figures. And I worry about social isolation. A famous researcher at UCLA, Naomi Eisenberger, spent a lot of time thinking about this. And specifically, she wondered why, when people were emotionally hurt or socially rejected, they often use language that sounds like a physical pain. You hear people say all the time, "My heart was broken. I felt crushed. She really hurt my feelings. It was like a slap in the face. Ugh, got me in the heart," right? So she started testing people for social pain, and some of her experiments were kind of interesting. Sometimes she used virtual reality and MRI scans of brains, and in virtual reality games, she made certain people not get the ball passed to them very much or not get picked for teams. In actuality, this wasn't really playing out, but the person believed it was happening to them. And what they found out when they put people in MRI machines is that the same parts of the brain lit up as if they were experiencing physical pain. So if you're experiencing emotional distress, you're also showing the same pain-related brain activity as if you got a physical injury. So it's the same thing. Now, if you think about evolution, why would this be? First of all, we are social creatures, and we can't survive without each other. Throughout history, we completely depended on other people for our survival. A surefire way to die and fall out of evolution's chain is to be rejected by the tribe. We needed people to help us gather food. We needed people to help protect us against predators or enemy tribes. We needed people to help us raise our young ones. Our social relationships literally kept us alive. So when the brain was evolving, probably Mother Nature took a little shortcut and said, okay, we'll just borrow the existing mechanism for physical pain, and this time we'll attach it to social pain. So it's real. Now, here's another interesting study. This one done by Roy Baumeister. And now he's a social scientist who spent 30 years studying self-esteem, decision-making, sexuality, free will, and belonging. He conducted a series of experiments in the 1990s, and he found something really interesting. Right after people had been socially rejected, they tended to become more aggressive, prone to cheating and risk-taking, and unwilling to help others. And actually, when he quizzed them about what they were feeling, he couldn't see any evidence of actually feeling hurt. He likens this to a kind of numbness that comes immediately after the injury. You know when you cut yourself, you're looking for a couple seconds and it's bleeding, but you don't actually feel the pain yet? Well, the same thing can happen with our brains in response to social rejection. He called this ego shock. So there's a shock time where you might become aggressive because that's a survival strategy. Let's say the tribe says, no, you're not getting any of this protein that we dragged in. Well, you don't have time to go away and lick your wounds alone in the jungle and be eaten by a predator. No, you come back to the tribe and you pound somebody and you hit them and you get to the front of the line so you can get some protein, right? And that's why you'd be more unwilling to help others. Here's another interesting research study on social pain. Let's go back to Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA. She had this thought, now that she could look at the MRIs and see that physical pain used the same mechanisms as social pain, what if painkillers that we normally would take for physical pain could buffer us from social pain? So what she did is she had some participants take 2 doses every day of Tylenol, a common painkiller. They had to do that for 3 weeks, while another group took just a placebo, a sugar pill. And each group recorded their day-to-day emotions in a diary. Well, by the end of her experiment, the Tylenol group reported way less emotional distress, and they showed less brain activity in the region surrounding pain. And this is after they were being rejected. Do I suggest that we all take 2 doses of Tylenol a day? No. There are other problems that can happen if you start to become drug addicted. But it is fascinating to see that social rejection is very, very similar to physical pain. And in fact, it has emerged as a key to a whole bunch of other discoveries in areas like psychology, neuroscience, economics, evolutionary biology, even genetics. For instance, there's been lots of data to show that when someone lives in poverty, they tend to die younger and they tend to have a lot more stress. Originally, that was thought to be associated with the fact that they have less access to health care or that they're just working such long, hard hours. Remember, our social status is relative. In other words, there's no social pain if everybody were on the same rung of the ladder. You're only on a certain social level when you compare yourself to other people. Evidence continues to mount that socioeconomic status is a key predictor of early death and poor health during this lifetime. That includes higher rates of cardiovascular disease, arthritis, diabetes, respiratory illness, cervical cancer, schizophrenia, substance abuse, and anxiety. Basically, the poor are lowest on the social ladder and have a harder time because they're feeling social rejection every day. Interestingly enough, it is the middle class that tends to suffer the most depression than the lower class. Why would that be? Well, I liken it to the Olympic silver medal winner. Research has been done on gold medal winners, those who won a silver medal, and bronze medal winners. And the most disappointed were the silver medal winners, the ones in the middle. Why would that be? Well, we know why the gold medal winner is the happiest, right? They've won. They're on the top of the ladder. We also know why the bronze medal winners are happy. They're just happy to be on the podium, all right? They're looking down at all the other athletes who never made it onto the podium. But where's that silver medalist looking? Up to that rung on the ladder, to that missed opportunity to win a gold medal. So I would venture to say that middle class people have the most depression for the same reason, because they're more class conscious, they're more susceptible to social evaluative threat. That means they're worried about what others think of them. They're worried about keeping up with the Joneses. They're worried about keeping up with a gold medal winner. And they're looking up. They're looking up at the upper middle class, and the upper middle class are busy looking at the wealthy. And the poor are happy to be alive. They're happy to be here. Here's the bad news about status, even for those who are on top. You can never win because the target keeps moving. The finish line keeps getting stretched along. If you even talk to the wealthiest people, they are sometimes so socially conscious and they fear social evaluative threat because staying on top is just as hard as staying in the game from the bottom. So what is the solution? Is there a solution? I mean, we evolved to have these enormous social pressures because the lowest on the rungs will fall out of evolution's chain. And we will continue to strive and evolve and grow stronger and grow smarter. And in order to do that, we have to have lots of human-to-human competition. Is there a solution? Well, some researchers think that the solution is actually equality. That greater equality can spark a chain of positive changes across a society. So if you look at, say, the more equal countries, like Japan or Sweden, Denmark, any of the Scandinavian countries, and you compare them to the least equal countries, where you have a really long ladder, America, Portugal, UK, what we find is the most unequal countries have the highest level of mental illness and obesity as the equal ones. We have 3 to 5 years lower life expectancy, 6 to 10 times higher teenage birth rates, and up to 12 times increased incidence of homicide, and of course, marked lower literacy. When you have greater equality, you dissolve the boundaries between groups. You promote social mixing. You create integration. You reduce the chances of social isolation. We know that social isolation is one of the biggest threats to our health. And remember, the brain doesn't know the difference between physical pain or social pain. So part of our social isolation is our perception of feeling alone. It is possible to feel alone in a crowd. There's been a lot of research on elderly people in social isolation and what are the things that keep some of them active, healthy, integrated, and living a really long time. And I think we can take some lessons from that for all of us at any stage of our life. Obviously, maintaining close relationships and continuing to forge new friendships and new relationships creates the kind of social support that we need for our mental health and our physical health. Interestingly enough, research shows that giving rather than receiving social support is a big antidote. In one study of 423 married older couples, they found that their lowest mortality rates were linked to helping out family, friends, and neighbors. That means helping them out emotionally and helping them out instrumentally, physically. So if I have any advice to you about how to reduce social isolation and how to reduce social rejection, I want to say this. Look down, not up. So when you are feeling a little bit rejected, think about others who may be living with less and take a moment to feel gratitude. That alone can improve your own mental health. And secondly, across the lifespan, it's never too late to make new friends. It's never too late to find a new mate. Try to find a mate who has a big tribe around them. That's a nice bonus. But we are meant to be interconnected. Right now in history, there are more Americans living alone than ever before. What used to be an intricate web of families, villages, and cities has become a lot of people living alone and connected to their technology. They're sitting alone in cars on freeways. They're sitting in their beds at night, watching Netflix. And so the answer, of course, is to get out and connect with somebody. It's good for your emotional health and it's good for your physical health because we evolved to not do well when we're isolated. So I encourage you to join a club, do some volunteer work. More than anything, pick up the phone the next time you want to connect with a friend. No more texting, okay? And the good news is this, despite the fact that marriage is on the decline in Western society, the research is still pretty clear. long-term bonded people who live together and are monogamous have longer lives. They have better health along the way, both better mental health and better physical health. I said monogamous for a reason. When you're in a relationship, it's good for your health to be monogamous. So I just encourage people to get connected, to be fearless when it comes to getting back into the tribe. Part of winning the mating game is losing the mating game sometimes. I remember years ago, a man, rejected me. And I was so hurt. I remember feeling just so hurt. And I sent him a text, which is not the thing to do. I'm telling you not to do it. And he wrote back, "Come on. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some." It enraged me to read that text, of course. But he was right. Absolutely right. You can't win the mating game without getting your feet wet, jumping in there, and losing the mating game sometimes. It helps you understand what your mate status is, where you should be shooting for, etc. So I want to give you a little advice for what you can do if you are being hurt by feelings of rejection, or you've been going through a breakup. If you feel crushed, if your heart feels broken, if your feelings are hurt, if you felt like you just had a slap in the face, here's what I want you to do. First and foremost, surround yourself by people who love you just because you're you. This may be close family, friends, platonic relationships, even coworkers who make you laugh. This will help fortify you so you can get some ego strength back to get back out there. To make sure that you don't have a rebound relationship and run out and have sex with the wrong person afterwards, get a pet or help with kids, get a massage, touch, hugs, kisses, platonic. No Me Too here, folks. But just make sure that you are around other human beings in a safe, comfortable, consensual way, and that you're still getting some benefits of touch without having to run out and date some stranger. Finally, I want you to write a love letter to yourself. I know, sounds totally corny, right? It's often the hardest exercise that I would ever give my patients back when I was in a clinical practice. I would ask them to go home and pretend that they were madly in love with themselves and write a letter about all their greatest features. It's hard for people to do because they've been taught humility and don't feel self-pride. But the real reason is because most people don't love themselves deeply. And I believe finding love is an inside job. And it begins with the most important relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. So do it. Go ahead. Put your name at the top. Dear my beloved, and then your name. Here is what I love about you most. By the end of that letter, read it through aloud in the mirror. You'll be reminded why you deserve a great, fabulous mate who's coming to you. Why don't you get on out there? No social isolation, okay? Thanks for listening to Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh with producer Brooke Peterson. We have 2 very exciting episodes coming to you in the next 2 weeks. We have Mean Girls, Gold Diggers, and Sluts. And after that, Pornography Mind. Beep. I did the beep. I didn't make Brooke do it. We'll see you next time. Mating Matters is produced in partnership with iHeartMedia. It is researched, interviewed, and written by me, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and it is edited and produced by Brooke Peterson. You know, people don't learn about podcasts usually by just searching around. They learn about a podcast because somebody who loved that podcast told them about it. So I encourage you to please subscribe, write a review, and more than anything, hit that share button now. Think of somebody who would like to hear this information as much as you enjoyed it. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Dr. Wendy Walsh. Listen to Mating Matters on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh. If you'd like to call the Mating Matters message line, you certainly can. The number is 323-207-8277. That's 323-207-8277. If you got a question, we want to hear it. Or maybe you have a comment. Either way, we love to hear from you, our listener.